Okay then. Everyone, welcome to our virtual Lunch and Learn for August. It's great to see so many of you here on the call. Today we'll be hearing from Cody Jenkins. He's a senior software engineer here at DS. And we'll be hearing on his experience with building contact centers using Amazon Connect. Cody will give us a brief overview of what Connect has to offer, and we'll demonstrate some of the common use cases. As I've been told, Connect doesn't currently offer out-of-the-box automated testing and deployment, so Cody will share his learnings from a 2-week spike that delivered continuous deployment. Following his talk, he'll answer any questions you may have. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Cody to discuss all things Connect related.
Thanks, Leanne. I'll just quickly share my presentation. Well, thank you everyone for joining today and taking the time to listen to the presentation I'm about to give. I'm actually especially excited to give this presentation today because there was a time last week where I thought I wasn't actually going to be able to complete everything altogether. I started to get chills and a fever, and I was kind of worried that I might have the coronavirus, but I got tested and everything's fine, so I was able to finish. During that experience, though, there was a moment where my fever was going up, and I was worried that maybe I needed to go to the doctor. So I called the National Health Line, and within about 5 minutes, I was able to talk to a nurse and describe my symptoms to her. And she told me that at the stage I was at, I'm fine and I don't need to worry about it. Just, keep an eye on the fever and everything. And that really put my partner and I at ease that, we didn't need to worry about, going to the hospital. So that sort of got me thinking more, like, because I've been working on Connect for the last few months, actually, that interaction really got me thinking just how important that connection is. Oh, I forgot. If you have any questions as I'm going through the presentation, please go to slide.do and enter this event code. Everyone who is listening to this presentation has had an experience in a call center where they either were left with a bad taste in their mouth because they weren't able to get the sort of solution that they were looking for, or they had a fantastic experience like the one that I had that left them feeling like I have a bit more confidence in sort of the way that things are being handled because I can talk to somebody and I have that human connection to be able to just help me feel like everything's okay. The contact center connection is such a critical part of that. And so Amazon has the contact center ends up being a really natural solution for a lot of problems like this. A lot of times we find ourselves wanting to create a new web page or a mobile app solution to sort of solve a problem that really would be better solved as a something that can be handled by a human. But it's just a lot easier to put something new into a web page or an app because of the comfort that we have working in that space. And up until recently, there really haven't been a lot of options as far as developing in this kind of quick, confident, iterative approach in contact centers. Delivering solutions with these sorts of solutions tends to be expensive and time-consuming, and not in the cloud. And these sorts of solutions can take weeks or months to deliver, depending on how complicated they are. As we build more omnichannel experiences, we need to focus on improving the customer experience at all touch points, including the contact center. If we can solve their problem at the point that they're calling in rather than handing them off to something else, then it's going to be a lot more seamless. And customers expect that speedy resolution connection faster today. So Amazon Connect's Omnichannel Cloud Contact Center solution supports customers in this way. You can either have a phone chat or an online web chat. And if you haven't tried out Amazon Connect before, it's a fully functioning contact center that you can set up in under 20 minutes. And the biggest difference between Connect and other solutions that are out there today is it's more of a solution enabler rather than a solution in and of itself. If you were to stack up the features that Connect has versus one of the other services like Genesis, for example, then feature for feature, it doesn't have as much. But it's basically like, if you think about it, it's like API gateway for people. So it opens the door to being able to innovate in the cloud. It has, as you would expect, tight integration with other services in AWS, like Lambda for general purpose computing, and Lex for voice navigation and sort of chatbot type solutions. And it's got tight integration with Kinesis video streams for doing transcription and recording. And as you'll hear a bit later, you can use those sorts of transcriptions to extract sort of meaningful information about the interactions between customers and agents. In the time that I've spent working on Connect, these are just a few of the ways that I've seen businesses use Connect solutions to improve the contact center experience. The most common one that I see is wanting to create a more engaging sort of voice navigation menu. To make the call-in experience a bit more engaging with conversational solutions like Lex, we can hook into sort of the existing natural language abilities of AWS. And we can use the information that we already have. Once we've identified a user who's called in, we can make that engagement a bit more personal by using, say, their name or information about the user in that initial conversation. We've also done a bit of work investigating agent assistance tools. For example, in one client, we're looking at transferring the caller to an automated flow for taking credit card payments quickly and securely, which saves time for the agent, but also gives the user a sense of, I'm not reading my credit card details off to a person who may be writing them down. This is against PCI compliance, obviously, but just that feeling of knowing that, that we take the customer's privacy seriously and are able to take their credit card details automatically is a nice, just echoes that sense of taking responsibility for the user's data. And the last one that I've explored at a previous job was using transcription to get some insights on the conversations that the users are having with agents. This isn't something that we've looked very deeply into, but it's something that comes right out of the box with Amazon Connect. The thing is, once you get these flows going, you have to continue iterating over them. And even the first time you deliver them, it's often difficult to get the conversation just right. If you try to design everything up front, which is often an approach in the early stages, then you might find that a lot of the upfront work gets thrown out, which is something that Brian, who is on this call, experienced looking at chatbots with NIB and NIBI. A lot of the conversation design that they did up front, after delivering parts of the solution and doing further user research, they found that they actually needed to iterate quite a lot on those conversations. So it's really critical when you're designing conversations that you need to be able to tweak things as you go to get the flow just right. And even once everything is working well, the market has a tendency to drift away. And sometimes that can be very quickly with things like COVID-19, where the needs of users shifts very dramatically. and the time that we spent carefully crafting conversation flows sort of gets thrown out of whack. So we need to be able to evolve over time frequently and confidently. It's for that reason that I'm most disappointed that Amazon Connect doesn't have as much infrastructure as code and full automation for doing deployments as many of the other services. There's limited CloudFormation support, but to me, the most important missing piece is the lack of ability to design and push the contact flows, which are the configuration of the flows, automatically. So that really limits the ability to iterate, especially because when you make these changes manually, they're prone to errors and are slow. Now, this is something that Amazon says that they're working on to add more Connect resources to CloudFormation. But I wanted to have a look to see what options do we have, what sort of engineering solutions can we put in place to get some of that automated deployment and development scaling working today. This approach that I'm going to go through now is something that I've come up with, it evolved it from another solution that I was looking at previously to scale that. You might have seen before a blog post that I put out a couple of months ago regarding scaling the development and testing of Amazon Connect solutions. Now, the pattern that I have here is a solution that I was trying to create, which allows us to pass the Amazon Connect voice to text conversation rather than going to Lex chatbot, go to a third-party chatbot. And as I designed this solution, I sort of started to think there might be a more general way of looping over the intentions of the user in a way where we could actually, even if we're not using Lex, we could gain some of the benefits of using this pattern to actually start redefining the way that we define contact flows in Connect. And so if we can take this sort of pattern and move the definition of those contact flows out of the Connect web UI and into a pure code situation, then that's going to give us a lot more flexibility in the sorts of things that we can do with that logic. This diagram is sort of an evolution of what I showed you before. I'll just show that what we have here is a contact flow. When you call in, Amazon Connect is configured to first call a Lambda, which loads up a program and passes off to the next step in the flow, which is sort of like a gigantic switch statement. And this Lambda can return a command to tell the contact flow what it should do. So in the simplest case, we'll want to play a prompt, something like hello world. So my Lambda can return an object, which the command block will pick up and see, oh, I need to play a prompt. And then the next phase of the flow will actually pick up a dynamically set attribute from that Lambda return and play a prompt dynamically before returning back to the initial Lambda and then going again. So using this pattern, we can create a sort of state machine where we can control the behavior of the contact flow from the Lambda and then delegate to these subflows depending on what action we want to be performed, and then loop back and control the behavior of the conversation entirely from the Lambda. This ends up looking like this in the actual UI. Now, this is a bit complicated, but I was able to create a small tool which actually generates this format. And so adding on additional flows becomes a bit easier because you can define them using JavaScript. And then you actually only need to put this into Connect once, and then you don't need to think about it. So you can deploy this and then leave it alone. All of the changes that you make to the flows will end up being done in the code itself. This is a preview of what that sort of looks like. So this is a very basic program. And in the main part of the program, we do an initial check to see that the user is actually coming from a voice channel. If not, we tell them that this is for telephone calls only. But then the next bit here, we return a little command which says, play a prompt. We specify what the prompt should be in SSML. And then we specify what the next handler should be after that is completed. And that takes us into the next function. So after the prompt is played, Connect will loop back into the Lambda, and the Lambda will know that the next handler that should be called is this prompt client ID. So we can use that next command to store the customer user input unencrypted, and then move on to the next command and so forth. Since we're defining it this way in code, we also have the benefit of writing behavior tests for that logic. So up front, I can write the code to verify that my flow is actually going to go down the path that I expect. And then once I have confidence that that is working, I can deploy that Lambda. And I also can have confidence that the other flows that were created previously have not broken. So as I mentioned before, you can use BDD to develop that flow logic. And now that we're in the Lambda space, we actually don't need to deploy anything to the Connect side at all. We can fully automate the deployments to Lambda using any CI/CD pipeline that you're used to using for Lambda. And you get a lot of the benefits of all of the benefits. There's even a way to do aliases in the Lambdas, so you can do canary releases, although that requires a bit of thinking because every time the Lambda gets called, there's a potential for it to go one alias or another. So there is a way to do it. We just have to figure out kind of the right formula for that. And obviously, you enjoy all of the other benefits like CloudFormation logging. One nice feature would be that you can log out all of the flows as they go and actually play back what users have done during that flow. So you can really start to get a good feeling for, are people going through different prompts multiple times, or is anyone dropping off in places that you don't expect, which is not as easy in the out-of-the-box Lambda. So rather than talking about it anymore, I'm going to do a quick demonstration. I'll show you how to write a test up front for a new flow, make the change, and then deploy that automatically. On the left, I've got my unit tests. I've got a couple of tests. This set of tests checks the behavior of a menu, which greets somebody who it does not recognize with a greeting, just a generic greeting. But for anybody who is recognized, then it greets them by their first name. I'm just going to give that conversation a call real quick. So you can hear what that sounds like.
Hi, Cody. Welcome to the Human Fund. What can I help you with today? If you would like to make a new donation, press 1. For questions related to your most recent donation, press 2.
As you heard in that flow, it was able to detect from my phone number that it was me calling. And it also knows that I've made a donation previously. So it asked me, it changed the menu based on my situation. Now let's say that we wanted to take that flow and evolve it further so that people who are frequent donators can go and talk directly to an agent so they don't need to spend the time navigating through the prompt. Maybe this is something we want to do to reward loyalty, or maybe there's a situation where someone has called many times and we want to send them directly to an agent. We can start by running the tests. So these are for our first two tests. And then I'll just create in here a new test. And then I'll quickly add in here a change to my mock so that my user is marked as a frequent donator. And so now I expect the same greeting, but this time I actually want the user to be redirected. In this case, what I'm going to do is, rather than transferring them, I'm just going to complete the call so that I can demonstrate this. And then I'll change the message to something like, thank you for your frequent donations. Let me get you to an agent so you can sort out your issue quickly. If I jump to my test, it fails as I expected to. And then on the right-hand side, I can write my implementation. So if my user is a frequent donator, if they donate frequently, I want to transfer to agent. Otherwise, I'll just go down the usual flow of prompting them for their call reason. And now that I know I'm going to send them to a new flow, I'll create a new function, transfer to agent, which returns a complete call command. And I will say what I expect to see. And that passes. And I've just noticed I've spelled donations wrong. So I'll fix that. So straight away, I've written a test and I've written an implementation. And because my tests are passing, I have confidence already that I've actually implemented this flow correctly. Now that I've completed that, I will do a CI run. Now this could be done in BuildKite, but I'm running it from my local machine now just for sake of time. The CI/CD run will pull on all the dependencies, run the validations against all of the pre-existing tests, and verify that I haven't broken anything in the meantime. And then once everything is validated, it'll start CloudFormation up and push those changes directly into the Lambda. It doesn't touch Connect at all. It only makes that change to the program itself, which the contact flow uses to drive that state machine. And so once this finishes pushing everything into the repo or into the stack, and I'll be able to immediately make that phone call and see that behavior difference.
Hi, Cody. Welcome to the Human Fund. What can I help you with today? If you would like to make a new...
Might have done that too quickly. Ah, right, there's one more piece. Database. So we got that old flow because my my contact information does not include that new field. So I'll just quickly add that in. Make the call again.
Hi, Cody. Welcome to the Human Fund. Thank you for your frequent donations. Let me get you to an agent so you can sort out your issue quickly.
So that's it. Now that change is live. And yeah, that can be your test environment. And then the next step in your deploy is to push that into production. And you can do that and know that that's all going to work without having to lift a finger other than to deploy that into prod. So let me just switch back to my presentation. Where do we go from here? We've seen that we all understand that some of these problems are best handled by humans, and we shouldn't try and shoehorn another feature into the app or into the website to try and solve problems like this. And we understand that the call center is part of an omnichannel experience, and it might be one that hasn't gotten as much attention because of the difficulty innovating in this space. We saw some common contact center experiences that can be improved by using any sort of technology, and how that can have a really meaningful impact on the experience of your customers and the speed that they are served. And we saw why it's so critical to be able to iterate quickly and confidently on the conversation flows, and how you might be able to do that using a technique like this sort of state machine contact flow loop. So from this point on, it pretty much comes down to looking at what is this sort of solution going to look like in your organization, and what are the sorts of contact flows that you want to put on that chain to, allow yourself to create experiences like this. So that's pretty much it. If any questions were submitted into that Slido doc, we can go through those now. And if you've got any questions yourself and you haven't had a chance to leave one, please go on to Slido now and just leave them there, and I'll do my best to answer the questions. I'll hand off to Erin.
Thanks, Cody. We don't have any in the slide. Oh, we just received one. That was fast. How long did it take you to figure this out?
It took just a minute to have the idea, but the situation building up to it and the actual implementation itself was what took the most time. I think to build out sort of the framework that I'm using took about a week to kind of get it the way that I wanted to. But I have in my mind an idea of, something that's a bit more general, and depending on the appetite from other people and from the current client, I would like to open source parts of this so that other people can contribute to it and be a part of the solution as well.
Thanks, Cody. We've just had another one come in. Have you looked at hooking it up to contact lens and tapping it into things like sentiment analysis, trends, etc.?
Could you say that again? I couldn't fully hear it.
Sorry. Have you looked at hooking it up to contact lens and tapping it into things like sentiment analysis, trends, etc.?
This particular solution doesn't have a direct, I guess you can do that with or without the solution. I haven't personally hooked up things to contact flow yet, but this just makes it easy for you to set that all up.
Yep. Fantastic, thank you. If anyone's got any more questions, if you want to pop them in Slido now, or feel free to unmute yourself and ask directly. We've just had 3 more come in, Cody.
Okay.
The first one's, what's the business benefit of using this instead of Connect out of the box?
The business benefit for this would be the ability to iterate quickly and confidently. So users, once you've hooked up contact flow and are starting to get some data in about what, how the conversation flows are happening today, you can start to see trends on what's working and what's not. This puts you in a position to run experiments and make changes quickly and easily without worrying about breaking other parts of the flow. So it gives you a lot more options as far as it's a better platform for running experimentation. I think that's the biggest thing.
Fantastic. Is the general approach to establish the first call flow in the Connect UI, then extending it through the Lambda backend?
Yeah, I might jump back to the diagram just to speak to that. So the approach that I took was I first created that my first approach was basically to create a hello world. So the contact flow is quite simple. It's got, there is another piece in here which sets some initial contact attributes, which are state that gets maintained throughout the entire call. And then I call into this Lambda and start by directing it to go into the, hello world play prompt. And I set that flow up. So once I've got that loop working, then I go and define a new command and go about developing the next part of that. Does that sort of answer the question? Whoever has asked the question, feel free to unmute and ask directly.
I would take that as a yes.
Okay.
Excellent. So the next question, are you able to talk to common op models of what the contact center team takes on versus the tech team in terms of ability to iterate?
And op models. The team that I'm with right now, the development team and the contact center representatives are very available. So that conversation can happen, straight away, straight in Slack. So could you read the question again? I want to make sure I'm answering it correctly.
Of course. Are you able to talk to common op models of what the contact center team takes on versus the tech team in terms of ability to iterate?
I think probably if I were to just make something up off the top of my head, the contact center team and the development team need to be in constant communication, whether that be a representative in stand-up or a weekly catch-up to see sort of what flows are working and what tools the contact center team can use to improve the experiences for customers. I think the feedback loop itself is a critical piece of it, just like it would be for any other part of the business. The nice thing is that setting up Connect, whether you're running a platform using this approach or just the regular vanilla Connect, you can do a level of experimentation with the team and test things out. But doing it with this approach, you can tighten that loop to be, a couple of days versus a couple of weeks.
Great, thanks, Cody. Does this model lend itself to more consistency in flow between voice and chat, or does that still require thought and planning?
I would say it lends itself to there being more consistency because the barrier to make change is lowered. When you spend the time to design a flow and arrange the boxes in the way that you like them, and then realize that chat needs to be adjusted or voice needs to be adjusted, it takes time to actually make those changes and do them confidently and get everything deployed. To the extent that they should be similar or the same flows is up for debate. I think my experience is that the voice flows really need to be looked at from a voice context. and the chat needs to be looked at from a chat context, because some things are easier to say than to type out, and some things are easier to type out than to say. So the alignment should make sense rather than alignment for alignment's sake.
Great. Have you heard when Amazon will roll out changes that allow for more automation of Connect?
I have heard. The most we can say is that it's being developed.
Cool. Does this cater for expansion into new channels and additional AWS or third-party services, such as an omnichannel strategy?
Absolutely. I think especially when you're dealing with a single view of the customer, if you've already got that for web and mobile, but you've not got it in the contact center, then this is just one of the easiest ways to get to that point quickly. And in addition, when you talk about different modes of communication, so out of the box, Connect supports telephone, obviously. It also supports web chat. There's another channel over SMS, which is not available directly within Connect, but is something that you can hook into. And so obviously, since you're in the AWS ecosystem, you can go and set up a Lambda and an SNS topic and Amazon Pinpoint to actually have those the same sorts of conversations using those tools. Now, the contact flows that you build in Connect cannot be reused for that Pinpoint conversation necessarily. Well, they can't unless you come up with a different way of handling that. But if you were to take sort of the similar approach as we've done, this sort of state machine approach, you can build very similar programs using that loop of Pinpoint and SNS for SMS conversations.
Great, thank you. Next question. Do you have any thoughts in treating frameworks to use for BDD with this approach?
Any thoughts in what about frameworks?
In treating frameworks to use for BDD?
I mean, the one that I've chosen to use in this particular example is Jest, but there's nothing stopping you from sort of expanding that into, you could write some gherkin step definitions if you want to write Cucumber. But I mean, I personally, what I would like to create is enough tools that, you know, you could build the integrations to other BDD frameworks as you like. I haven't thought any further than Jest at this stage, but the piece that I'm using for writing the unit test is really just this session object, which you can step through to collect the current state and then provide user input where useful or necessary.
Great, thanks, Cody. How do the values collected within the flow passed on to contact center agents? How does values collected within the flow pass on to contact center agents? Does Amazon Connect handle that?
That's a good question. The contact attributes are available to the agents. The way that I've seen it most recently is there is a tool that Amazon provides to do Salesforce integration. And so if you are using Connect and Salesforce is the front end, if you will, for the agent soft phone, then from Connect, you can do things like pop up the current information that you know about the customer with a screen pop. And all of the code that you need to achieve that is both available and documented in the Salesforce Trailhead. I believe there's similar integrations for Zendesk. So basically, the information is available. It's just a matter of showing the information that you want to the agent as needed.
Great. Last question we've got here. Does Contact Lens Reporting Suite pick up the same data using this approach?
without having used context lens with this approach, I can't say with 100% certainty, but I believe the answer is yes, because this approach isn't doing anything other than using the existing contact flow building blocks in a different way. This isn't subverting that aspect of it. So since contact lens is hooked into Connect's infrastructure already, and this is just a different arrangement than is typical, I strongly believe that all of the insights are still there.
Wonderful. If anyone's got any more questions, feel free to drop them into Slido now or shout them out. Otherwise, we'll send a link out following Cody's talk to our Slack-DS community that you can join and ask any further questions. But unless you've got anything else, I think that's it. Cody?
Yeah, that's it from me.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Cody.